My name is Colton Merrick, and for most of my marriage, I believed I was the luckiest man alive. Or at least, that's the lie I told myself while I overlooked the late nights, the business trips that dragged on too long, and the just-a-friend messages from numbers I didn't recognize. The night it all shattered wasn't supposed to be anything but a celebration. It was a Friday. Mallory, my wife, had just landed a massive account for her boutique marketing firm downtown Charleston. Her boss rented out a historic mansion for a private party. Vaulted ceilings, sweeping staircases, chandeliers that looked stolen from palaces. Mallory was insistent that I come. You have to meet everyone. You've been my rock through this, she said, flashing that dazzling smile that used to bend my will without a fight. I lingered by the open bar, sipping bourbon, watching her move through the room like she owned it. Everyone, from executives to caterers, hanging on her every word. I didn't mind. I loved seeing her shine. That's when he appeared. A man with slicked back hair, a too-tight tie, and a smirk that curled like smoke. Seth Bramble. A senior strategist, he introduced himself, but the way he hovered close to Mallory made it clear he saw himself as more. I smiled, shook his hand, played along. Then came the moment that turned the air sharp and cold. During the toast, when glasses clinked and all eyes turned to Mallory, Seth lifted his champagne and said, clear enough for the whole room, to Mallory, for proving some women really can have it all. A brilliant career and a man patient enough to stay out of her way while she does the real work. Laughter rolled through the crowd, jagged, mocking. Mallory laughed too, brushing Seth's arm like it was nothing. And under that chandelier, in a room full of strangers, I felt something inside me splinter. I didn't lash out. I didn't storm out. I just watched. I watched the way Seth looked at her when he thought I wasn't looking. Watched the way Mallory leaned in closer than she had to. Watched the glances they traded, sharp and secretive, like a private language. And I realized, those lonely nights at home weren't paranoia. They were warning signs. Sometimes, betrayal doesn't crash through your life. Sometimes, it tiptoes in, wrapped in champagne and counterfeit smiles. That night, I made a silent vow. I wouldn't be the fool in the background. If they thought they were playing me, they were about to find out the game had just changed. While Seth raised toasts and Mallory spun her web of lies, I was already preparing to dismantle everything they thought was untouchable. Regret? That would only be the beginning. The ride home was a slow suffocation. Mallory sat in the passenger seat, scrolling her phone, laughing at things she never showed me. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. Every glance, she tossed my way a brittle, distracted smile. You were a hit tonight, she said. Everyone thought you were hilarious. It felt scripted, hollow, like a performance she no longer had the energy to perfect. When we pulled into the driveway, she leaned over, pressed a dry kiss to my cheek, and slipped inside without a second thought. I sat there for a long moment, engine ticking as it cooled, feeling less like a husband and more like a trespasser in my own life. Inside, the house was spotless, cold, silent. Mallory had already vanished upstairs, probably answering Seth's texts, disguised as work. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than suspicion. I needed certainty. In the days that followed, the cracks became impossible to ignore. A new perfume. Heavy, cloying, one she never wore for me. Her phone locked the second I entered the room. Strategy meetings scheduled at absurd hours. And worst of all, the way she treated me. Not with hostility, but with polite detachment, like I was an old neighbor she barely remembered. I decided to test her. One night, I told her I'd booked a weekend getaway. Just us. A cabin tucked away in the mountains. No phones, no work, just quiet. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she said, "That sounds amazing, but it's a bad time for work." I nodded, pretending to understand. But inside, I steeled myself. If work was so important, why was she smiling at her phone late into the night? Why were weekends suddenly reserved for meetings? I wasn't going to play the fool anymore. I reached out to Trent, an old friend with a talent for tracing digital footprints. Within hours, he had a discreet tracker installed on Mallory's car, so small she'd never notice. He showed me how to monitor her movements through an app disguised as a weather service. The storm was coming, and this time, I was ready. For 2 weeks, I said nothing. I smiled when she claimed she was working late, kissed her forehead when she said she was too tired for dinner. And all the while, I watched the little blue dot on my phone drift, out of the office, across town, into private neighborhoods and anonymous hotels. Hotels. Again and again. One Tuesday, when she said she was pulling an all-nighter with the team, I watched her settle into a boutique hotel downtown, nowhere near her office. I didn't call, didn't text, just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling nothing at all. Not anger, not sadness, just a cold, mechanical clarity. They thought they were clever, spinning their lies with practiced ease. But they forgot something vital. I wasn't the man who sat quietly at the back of the room anymore. I wasn't the man who swallowed every excuse and clapped for every hollow achievement. I was the man who was about to rewrite the story. And when I was done, Seth Bramble and my so-called wife would understand humiliation, not through shouting, not through violence, but with precision, with patience, with a vengeance so sharp they wouldn't even see it coming, until it cut straight through them. The next morning, Mallory kissed me goodbye, humming about some important lunch meeting, vanishing in a cloud of expensive perfume and high heels. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, letting the clock tick away while the plan I'd been crafting unfurled in my mind. I wasn't going to confront her. That would be too easy for her to twist, to deny. I needed proof. Evidence no sweet talk or crocodile tears could erase. I called Trent again. This time, I needed more than a tracker. I needed eyes and ears. By the next day, we had it all set. A camera disguised as a phone charger hidden in her car. Another tucked neatly into the lining of her work bag. Technology, it turns out, has no loyalty to liars. I didn't have to wait long. That Friday night, she said she had a team-building event. I smiled, handed her the bag, kissed her cheek, and wished her a good time. As soon as she pulled away, I opened the app Trent had installed. Live feeds from the car and the bag blinking into life. At first, it looked harmless. She parked near a sleek cocktail lounge downtown, hugged a few coworkers, played the part. Then Seth appeared, smug, too casual, hugging her like she belonged to him, not just a colleague. I watched, heart steady, as the drinks flowed and laughter spilled into the night. Their body language told the real story. But it was around midnight, in a dark corner booth, that the truth bared its teeth. Seth slid into the booth beside her, not across. He whispered in her ear. She laughed, that soft, breathy laugh she used to save for me. Then she turned, leaned in, and kissed him. Not a quick, nervous kiss. Not a drunken mistake. A kiss that said they'd done it before. A kiss that said they had no fear of being caught. I leaned back in my chair, the kitchen cloaked in silence, but for the faint buzz of the live feed. Watching them was like watching strangers. There was no pain, no rage, only a kind of grim finality. This wasn't some slip-up. This was a full-blown affair, and they weren't even trying to hide it. I could have stormed downtown, made a scene, dragged them into the light. But that's what they would expect. That's what fools do. Instead, I smiled, because now they had handed me exactly what I needed. For years, I had been the quiet man in the background, the dutiful husband, the invisible fool. But even the quietest man carries weight when he knows the truth. And now, I was going to dismantle them piece by piece, without ever raising my voice, without breaking a single rule. All I needed was one last, perfect move, and it was already underway. The next morning, the house was filled with the smell of coffee and the bright, easy hum of Mallory moving through the kitchen, like a woman with no sins to hide. Almost impressive, the way she could play her part. I sipped my coffee from across the room, watching her smile, listening to her talk about another busy weekend ahead. I didn't flinch when she kissed my cheek. Didn't even blink. I just nodded and smiled back, letting her believe, for one final moment, that she had won. By noon, she was gone again, and I got to work on the final move. I sat at the kitchen table and drafted an email, polite, brimming with enthusiasm. An anonymous donor, I wrote, wanted to honor Mallory's entire firm with a special appreciation dinner at a new restaurant downtown. No cost, complimentary gifts for standout employees, and one very important stipulation. Every guest must bring their significant other. It was mandatory, a celebration of the unseen support behind their success. Within an hour, RSVPs poured in. Mallory's, Seth's. They walked right into it, blind and smiling. The next few days were a quiet storm of preparation. I coordinated with Trent to reserve a private backroom, outfitted discreetly with hidden cameras feeding live to my laptop. I slipped the manager a generous tip, no questions asked. Every piece clicked into place. When Friday night arrived, Mallory lit up like a marquee. She wore a dress I'd never seen before, short, tight, shimmering like she couldn't wait to be noticed. She spent nearly an hour at the mirror, layering on the same heavy perfume I'd smelled lingering in the car after her nights away. She thought tonight would be another easy performance, another evening of stolen glances and secret smiles. If only she knew. We arrived a little early. I held her hand, complimented her, laughed at her jokes, played my part to perfection. She didn't suspect a thing. Seth arrived moments later, swaggering through the door with that smug grin glued to his face. Alone, of course. Typical. As the night unfolded, I watched them, their eyes meeting, their stolen smiles growing bolder with every glass of wine. They thought they were so clever. They thought no one could see. When dessert was served, I tapped my glass with a fork, rising slowly to my feet. The room fell into a hush. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, smiling warmly. Thank you for coming tonight. I just want to take a moment to honor those who embody loyalty, dedication, and integrity, both at work and at home. I let my eyes land on Mallory, then on Seth. Without breaking my smile, I clicked the small remote hidden in my pocket. Behind me, the wall that had seemed like simple paneling shifted. A hidden screen descended. Gasps rippled through the room as the footage started rolling. Mallory, Seth, caught in frame after frame, laughing, whispering, kissing. In the lounge, in the car, at the hotel. Every lie, every betrayal, captured in merciless, vivid clarity. The room froze. Faces paled. Whispers buzzed like wasps trapped in a jar. Mallory's face crumbled into shock. Seth stared, hollow and broken. No one moved. No one spoke. I placed the remote on the table, still smiling wider than I had in months. Thank you all for being witnesses, I said softly. Have a wonderful evening. And with that, without shouting, without slamming a door, without losing a shred of my composure, I walked out, head high, heart free. But trust me, this was only the beginning of their unraveling. Stepping out into the crisp night air, I half expected footsteps behind me, Mallory's voice shrieking my name, chasing after me with frantic apologies. But the street stayed silent, heavy with the weight of what I'd left behind. I didn't look back. Not once. I slid into my truck, started the engine, and drove away, leaving them to their wreckage. That night, I didn't go home. I disappeared into the woods, to the old fishing cabin my grandfather left me, hidden so deep among the trees that even the wind had to search for me. I needed space. Silence. A place where I could remember that what I'd done wasn't vengeance. It was truth. I hadn't destroyed Mallory. I had simply switched on the lights. The messages started flooding in before midnight. Her name flashing across my screen again and again. Colton, please, just talk to me. You don't understand. It's not what it looked like. We were just drunk. It didn't mean anything. Lie after desperate lie, piling up like rubble in a collapsed house. Then the voicemails, sobbing, begging, gasping through apologies. I made a mistake. I love you, not him. Please don't throw everything away over one stupid mistake. But it wasn't one stupid mistake. It was 1,000 tiny betrayals, stacked so high they finally toppled under their own weight. By Sunday afternoon, the tone shifted. Sweetness gave way to venom. Accusations. You humiliated me. You made a fool out of both of us. How could you be so cold? So heartless? You'll regret this, Colton. You'll see. No, Mallory. I wouldn't regret a damn thing. Because for the first time in years, the fog had lifted. I saw everything clearly now. Word of the dinner spread through her office like wildfire. By Monday, the firm's HR department launched a full investigation. Seth was suspended pending review. Mallory was hauled into serious meetings about conduct unbecoming. Her pristine career, the crown jewel she had built her life around, was bleeding out in front of everyone. And I hadn't lifted a single finger. I didn't need to. I just sat back and watched as the consequences, real, raw, brutal, ripped through the facade she had so carefully constructed. But I wasn't finished yet, because Mallory wasn't the only one who owed me answers. There was another name that kept flashing through her texts. Someone she had always brushed off, a harmless friend from accounting. A background character I hadn't thought twice about, until now. Curiosity, sharpened by cold purpose, is a dangerous thing. I opened the tracker app again, not on Mallory this time, but on Seth's car, a backup plan Trent and I had quietly set in motion weeks ago. One glance at the screen, and my blood turned to ice, then fire. Seth wasn't meeting Mallory anymore. No, he was meeting someone else. Someone whose name hit harder than any betrayal before. Abigail Turner, Mallory's oldest friend. My friend. The woman who had stood beside us at our wedding, smiling as if she truly believed in forever. The web wasn't just tangled, it was suffocating. And I was about to tear it all apart. The next morning, after a sleepless night filled with jagged thoughts, I sat on the porch of the cabin, cradling a steaming cup of black coffee and staring at the tracker glowing on my phone. Seth's vehicle sat parked outside a neat suburban townhouse I knew all too well. Abigail's place, a neighborhood where every house looked the same, but the secrets festering inside were anything but. At first, I wanted to tell myself it was a coincidence, that maybe Seth had found someone else, someone Abigail just happened to know. But deep down, I knew better. Instinct had kept me alive this long. I wasn't about to start ignoring it now. I drove into town, slow and deliberate, parking a block away and approaching on foot, a shadow slipping through the cracks they thought were safe. It was late afternoon, curtains drawn, Abigail's car in the driveway. I waited, and just before the sun dipped behind the rooftops, the front door cracked open. Abigail stepped out, laughing, bottle of wine in hand. Seth followed, his hand sliding around her waist, pulling her in for a kiss so familiar, so practiced, it made me want to laugh out loud at the sheer audacity of it. It didn't hurt, not the way it would have once. It just confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't one betrayal. It was a pattern, a sickness, a network of rot that had wrapped itself around every part of my life. Abigail had known about Mallory, had helped her hide it, and now, she was right there in the wreckage. I snapped a few photos from the shadows. Clean, clear, irrefutable, not because I needed more proof, but because I wanted them to know the days of hiding were over. I saw everything now. When I returned to the cabin, I sat at the old kitchen table and wrote 2 letters, one for Mallory, one for Abigail. Mallory's was clinical, brutal in its simplicity. I told her I knew everything, not just about her and Seth, but about every lie she had ever told. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I laid it out with surgical precision. At the end, I wrote, when you build a life out of lies, don't be surprised when it collapses on top of you. Abigail's letter was even colder. Loyalty isn't tested when life is easy. It's tested when temptation knocks. You failed. No return address. No warnings. No explanations. Let them tear themselves apart with doubt and guilt while I walked away clean. Meanwhile, I met with my lawyer. Quiet, efficient, ruthless. I filed for divorce, citing infidelity with a mountain of evidence attached. In our state, that meant the division of assets would swing heavily in my favor. I would keep the house, most of the savings, a large portion of the retirement fund Mallory had so smugly built while weaving her lies. In the end, she wouldn't just lose me. She'd lose everything she thought she was untouchable enough to keep. In less than 2 months, Mallory lost everything she thought she had so carefully secured. Not because I hated her, not because I wanted revenge, but because I was done pretending that I owed her anything but the cold, sharp consequences she had earned. And as for Seth and Abigail, their little affair wouldn't survive the pressure. People like them, liars, users, can't exist without someone else to deceive. Now, trapped together in their own rot, they'd tear each other apart faster than wolves in a cage. I didn't need to watch. I didn't need to see the wreckage firsthand. I had already won the moment I walked away, free, clear, and stronger than they ever thought possible. That kind of victory, no public spectacle could ever touch it. The divorce papers were filed through proper channels, the evidence neatly bundled like a dagger wrapped in silk. Mallory was served at work, standing there in the middle of her pristine office, a packet of cold reality landing in her hands while the entire room watched. Thanks to Trent, I got a glimpse of the aftermath. Mallory, frozen, mouth slightly agape, her cheeks flaming red as whispers slithered through the air around her. No amount of charm could save her now. No bright, perfect smile could stitch together what she had ripped apart. I stayed silent. I didn't text back. I didn't answer the barrage of calls or the long, rambling emails thick with half-truths and desperate rewrites of history. I wasn't cruel. I just refused to let her back into a place she no longer had any right to be. Meanwhile, the investigation at her firm wrapped up. Brutal conclusions, violations of conduct, misuse of company resources, undisclosed relationships. Mallory was given a choice: resign quietly or face public disgrace. Seth wasn't offered such mercy. He was fired on the spot, paraded out of the building like yesterday's garbage. And then came the final blow, delivered not by my hand, but by reality itself. Photos of Seth and Abigail surfaced, an anonymous blast sent to key employees. No commentary, no demands, just pure, damning evidence. Rumors caught fire, not just about Seth and Abigail, but about the entire crumbling facade Mallory had hidden behind for years. Her carefully crafted image wasn't bruised. It was obliterated. I heard the stories from Trent, from old friends, from the whispers that wound their way back to me. I didn't need to see the wreckage to know it was there. The real satisfaction wasn't in their downfall. It was in my own freedom. It was in the deep, clean silence of a life unburdened by lies. The last time Mallory reached out was through a handwritten letter delivered to my lawyer's office. The handwriting was shaky, the words laced with memories. Our first date, our first home, the dreams we once whispered to each other like secrets. She apologized. She begged. She asked if there was any part of my heart left that could forgive her. That night, I sat on the back porch, reading under the soft orange glow of the porch light. The same place I used to wait for her when the nights grew too long and the excuses were too thin. When I finished, I folded the letter neatly, placed it into the fire pit, and lit a match. I watched the paper curl into blackened ash, the words and promises disintegrating into the night sky. And as the last ember floated away, I understood something that anchored itself deep inside me. Forgiveness doesn't always mean welcoming someone back. Sometimes, it simply means choosing yourself, choosing freedom, choosing peace. Mallory would live with her choices. Seth would live with his disgrace. Abigail would live with her shame. And me? I would live free, without second-guessing myself, without chasing loyalty from people who never understood its worth. Somewhere deep inside, I know they all expected me to break, to lash out, to crumble. Instead, I walked away. And in doing so, I became something they could never touch again, untouchable. The months that followed were unlike anything I had ever known. For the first time in years, I woke up without that heavy stone lodged in my chest. The house was quieter, but it wasn't a hollow silence. It was a healing one. I spent my mornings on the porch, a fresh cup of coffee in hand, listening to the trees breathe instead of the buzz of unseen betrayals. I dusted off old hobbies that had withered during the chaos, built new habits stitched with quiet joy. I bought a battered old boat and spent weekends fishing, the kind of peace settling into me that can't be faked or forced. Old friends trickled back into my life, not out of pity, but because they saw the change in me. The walls I'd built during my marriage weren't needed anymore. I didn't have to shrink myself to survive. I could finally just be. Professionally, life surprised me too. An old colleague offered a new opportunity in a new city, an invitation to rebuild, not from the ashes, but from the rich soil of lessons learned. 6 months after the night, everything collapsed. I packed the few things that truly mattered and moved across the country, to a small coastal town where the air smelled like salt and second chances. I bought a modest house with a wide porch and a view of the endless ocean, the kind of place that felt like home the moment my boots touched the floor. Life didn't magically become perfect. Some days, the past still knocked gently at the back of my mind, but I didn't let it in. I had fought too hard for this peace. One evening, as the sun melted into the sea, painting the sky with gold and fire, I sat barefoot in the sand with a book in my hand and realized something powerful and simple. Sometimes losing what you thought you needed is the only way to find what you truly deserve. Mallory, Seth, Abigail, they were just chapters. Painful, necessary, but they were not the whole story. I wasn't broken. I wasn't bitter. I was alive, wide awake, stronger than ever. And as the waves whispered secrets to the shore, I smiled. Not for what I had lost, but for what I had finally found. Myself.